This recording will cover membranes. Membranes are thin sheets of flexible tissue that cover or line a part of the body. Contains epithelial and connective tissue. These will be epithelial membranes, or just connective tissue, which would be your synovial membrane. There are three types of membranes: mucous membrane or mucosa. These line a body cavity that opens directly to the outside. They line the entire digestive, respiratory, reproductive, and much of the urinary systems. The mucous membranes are important because they act as a barrier against microbes and other pathogens, and they secrete mucus. Synovial membrane line the cavity of freely movable joints. For example, the shoulder, the elbow, the knee, etc. They secrete a fluid called synovial fluid, which lubricates and nourishes the cartilage covering the bones. The distinguishing feature of a synovial joint is the synovial cavity between the articulating bones. The serous membrane or serosa line a cavity that does not open directly to the outside. They serve to cover organs and will secrete a serous fluid, which is a watery, lubricating fluid that allows organs to glide easily over one another. They are found in the form of an invaginated double-walled space. They always have two layers separated by a cavity. The parietal layer is the layer that is attached to the cavity wall. The visceral layer is that layer that covers and attaches to the organs inside of the cavity. The three major types of serous membranes, the three Ps. The pleura is the serous membrane lining the thoracic cavity and covering the lungs. The parietal pleura is the layer that is attached to the cavity wall. The visceral pleura is the layer that covers the lungs. The pleural cavity is the space between the parietal and visceral pleura. This cavity is filled with a pleural fluid, a serous fluid. The pericardium is the serous membrane lining the heart cavity and covering the heart. The parietal pericardium is the layer that is attached to the cavity wall. The visceral pericardium, or epicardium, is the layer that covers the heart itself. The pericardial cavity is the space between the parietal and visceral pericardium. This cavity is filled with pericardial fluid, a serous membrane. The peritoneum is the serous membrane lining the abdominal cavity and covering the abdominal organs. The parietal peritoneum lines the wall of the abdominal pelvic cavity. The visceral peritoneum covers some of the organs in the abdominal cavity as well as some in the pelvic cavity. The peritoneal cavity is a slim space between the parietal and visceral peritoneum. This cavity is filled with peritoneal fluid, again a serous fluid.